hear the interview that I just had, but you know, this bill is so long out, and so much can happen in the future, and so much is loaded in the front part of the 10-year period than the back part, is that it's hard for me to have, look, I want the best, I want everything to work out, but it's hard for me to have that sort of, you know, cheerleading thought that a lot of people have about the bill. It worries me, just as it would worry me to do nothing.
Sure. Well, I mean, here's the top lines that you need to know about this. One, it makes tax cuts permanent. So we're preventing $4 trillion from increasing in revenue coming to Washington, D.C. and keeping it back home. It secures the border. It finishes the wall. And at the same time, because we're making the tax permanent, because of the stuff we're doing with the economy, we're making sure that the taxpayers, and especially a family of four, is going to be able to keep more of their pay. In this case, and with this one big, beautiful bill, it's going to increase, bring home pay for a family of four by roughly $10,000 a year. That's huge.
Couldn't you do the permanent tax cuts without all this other stuff? I mean, there's so much baked into this that it's sort of hard to, you know, to understand of it. Couldn't you have just passed a bill? And I realize it's reconciliation, so this is your big chance to get a lot of stuff done where you don't have to contend with the filibuster. But a lot of the things the American people really like, you know, keeping the tax cuts, that could have been a standalone themselves, either with a filibuster or as its own standalone reconciliation. Right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah. No, Greta, you're right. However, you also know how D.C. works. Everything's negotiated. And anytime you want to do something in tax, there's not a lot of opportunities we've had to be able to do that up here, and people start front-loading it, and they start holding the bill hostage. That's just part of it. There's a lot of personalities in the Senate, and there's a lot of personalities in the House, and when you start negotiating it, which is why we never have a perfect bill, when you have what we call a rider, and when you have the rider that's going to be able to pass, then you start attaching things to it, and it starts getting inflated. Fortunately, through reconciliation, it creates a very narrow window. So it has to deal with revenue or taxes inside of mandatory spending. So this gives us an opportunity to have the largest deficit cut than we've had in American history by cutting spending by $1.6 trillion. That's a huge step forward.
If with the big, you know, the deficit cut, you know, that's great. No, everyone wants it. At least you should want a deficit cut. But then we go back to what Senator Rand Paul says. You know, is that we're raising the debt ceiling, so we're going to be borrowing more money. You know, so I mean, you know, if we're having this big, you know, deficit cut, wouldn't you think that we wouldn't have such a urgent need to raise the debt ceiling? We could sort of discuss it as we went along when we needed the money.
Well, you would think so. The problem is we inherited a very bad economy from the Biden administration. This is like Biden building a business or purchasing a business that's going underwater. You have to get a bank loan to be able to expand it. So you know you might be in the red for a little bit. You're going to take it to the bank. You're going to give them a business plan. You're going to say, hey, this is my plan to get it in the black. Will you loan me this money? And when they do, then you have that plan to move forward. In this particular plan, we have 3 bites of the apple: reconciliation, appropriation, and rescission. And if we can get these 3 things done, including keeping on track with the Trump agenda and the way he's moving the economy forward by bringing down inflation, bringing up the job reports every single month by meeting expectations, and you also see the incredible amount of investments that's coming back through manufacturing. If we stay on this trajectory, we're going to see that we're going to balance the budget for the first time in 2.5 years. But we can't simply do this overnight. We got to borrow the money for a little bit to get us down the road to where we need to go, because that's how businesses operate, and that's how we're going to operate too. That's why we have a business person elected in the White House. That's why the American people chose us instead of the Democrats to run this government in November.
What's going to happen a year from now when all of a sudden there's a discussion about the budget? I mean, because in a year from now, you'll still have the majority in the House and the Senate. Obviously, it's a year later for people to get get tax cuts and everything. But we're gonna now you've set the agenda for 10 years out. But as a practical matter, in a year, if you wanted, you could amend that so that it wasn't 10 years out or 9 years out at that point. You could do whatever you want.
You're absolutely correct. That's why I hate projecting things 10 years. That's why I've been talking about things for 2 years, like cutting the taxes, making them permanent, making sure that we cut deficit spending now, and understanding where the economy is going in 2.5 years. But you're absolutely right. One Congress can't make another Congress liable for what they did. So in the 120th Congress, which happens in about a year and a half, they could go away from this. The good thing is we're going to have the president still in the White House. The bad thing is we don't control what will happen in the midterm. All we can do is control today, and we need to make the best possible outcome for the future generations as we can. And that's what this bill does. It moves us away from the Biden-era policies and moves us into the Trump policies, making America great again.
What are you hearing about the House reactions? Because this will have to be, there have to be some reconciliation with the House. What are you hearing from the House?
Well, they have some real concerns about the bill, especially when it comes to Medicaid. I understand that. We had some real concerns about SALT when it came over here. We had to negotiate back and forth. It's difficult. That's why our founding fathers set this up, to really slow down government, making sure that both chambers have to sign off on it before it can get to the president's desk. It's going to be tough. It was tough for us to take the House bill and try to make it better. By the time we send it back to them, there's some people that have some real issues because of the smaller group of people they represent inside each district instead of having the whole state. But we're still going to deliver this for the president and for the American people. There's not any daylight between the House, the Senate, and the White House. We're all in the same boat. We're all rowing in the same direction to deliver for the American people.
Senator Mark Wayne Mullin, thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you, Greta. Thanks for having me on.